everyone, I'm Jed Goodwin, and welcome to Thoughtful Thursday. We hope you all had a great time on yesterday, and we are so happy you're joining us today. We have a fun surprise for you today, actually. Our Jam Competition Host School is here to spread some joy with a classic WASC song for us today. Here is Monroe Middle School.
Hello everyone, my name is Sydney Wunschel, and I'm from Monroe Middle School, and we are the competition Jam hosts this year. With that being said, everyone stand up and join me in doing brown squirrel. Assume the position. Brown squirrel, shake your bushy tail, brown squirrel, shake your bushy tail, that's right. Put a peanut in your palm and shove it up your nose. Brown squirrel, shake your bushy tail. Thanks everyone, bye!
Our next presenter is an advocate for kindness and focuses on spreading love worldwide. He is the co-founder of Character Strong, which is an organization that creates compassionate cultures in schools and communities. We are so honored to have him here on this Thoughtful Thursday. Please welcome Houston Kraft.
What's going on, Wisconsin Association of Student Councils? I am so sad that we don't get to hang out face to face. I was making back-to-back trips to hang out with you all, and I know that the whole team has worked incredibly hard to pull this conference together. So please know that I appreciate you, I'm thinking about you, and know that one day again soon, we're gonna get to do this in real life. In the meantime, I've pulled together some thoughts around how you and I, as leaders, can make a more loving world. Hi, my name is Houston, and I'm the co-founder of Character Strong. And for like the past at least decade, I've been talking about and thinking about kindness. In fact, I wandered around to like 600 schools or conferences. Most of them were in person, and now we have to do this whole digital thing. Back in the day, I was speaking in schools all the time about kindness. And a few years ago, I was at a conference, and I was about to get on stage. There was a bunch of speakers in a row. I was like third in line. And I was going to talk about how important kindness is and try to sell everyone on the idea of like, we need more kindness in the world. And the person that went right before me was a woman named Noemi Bon. And she was a Holocaust survivor. She was supposed to talk for 30 minutes, but she spoke for 90. She was 94 years old when she spoke. And she was going way over time, but you don't interrupt an old person or a Holocaust survivor. So I'm sitting on the side of the stage listening. And her story is profound and beautiful, literally stuff you could not make up. She ended up escaping in a giant ball of yarn, and it's part of the reason she's alive today. She literally said, "Take that, Hitler," and she can actually say that. And I remember sitting on the side thinking I've been for years trying to tell people that kindness is important. And I realized as I was about to go on that everyone already agrees with me. Everyone already agrees that kindness is worthwhile. Kindness is an important thing. I have never asked anyone, what do you think about kindness? And they're like, it's okay. We all know that it's important because we all crave it in our life. But as Noemi Bon finished her story, talking about one of the cruelest acts in our history, I realized that maybe it's not a question of whether or not kindness is worthwhile. Maybe the better question is, what gets in the way? What prevents us from being the most kind version of ourselves? Why is it that we have this gap in our world between what we know is good and actually what we are good at? I think that gap exists every single day. There are things that we believe in, but we're not very skilled at. There are things that we say are important, but we actually don't make time for. So what is it that gets in the way of kindness? Well, I think it's three main things: fear, feelings, and frequency. Let's talk about feelings to start. What the research tells us is that when anxiety goes up, empathy and kindness goes down. It makes sense. The more anxious I am in my life, the harder time I have thinking about what's going on in yours. And there are plenty of reasons to be anxious or scared or stressed or overwhelmed in the world right now, which means if we're not paying attention, if we're not careful, the more anxious we get, the less kind we get. So I've been chatting with some students who are going through some similar stuff that all of us are. And I asked them about what they're feeling right now. This is them.
My name is Driver. I am 17 years old. One fun fact about me is that I have 7 brothers and 1 sister, so my house is chaotic all the time, and I have nieces and a future nephew. And an emotion that I'm feeling right now, I would have to say is guilty indifference. I I don't know, I feel kind of indifferent to everything that's going on. Sometimes I'm really sad, sometimes I'm happy, and part of me feels almost guilty for coping so well, kind of in a sense, with what's going on. So more to that later, but those are my emotions right now.
My name is Robert Cordejo. I'm 16, and something about me is that, I'm a huge sports fan, from like boxing, soccer, basketball, football, you name it. I love to watch sports. And feeling right now is probably anxious, but, relaxed at the same time with all like the schoolwork that I got. But I'm relaxed at the same time because, I know that I can control that.
Hi, I'm Aaliyah Tiano, and I am 17 years old. One fun fact about me is I'm a songwriter. I've been writing songs for about a year and a half, and so far written 7 songs. The feeling or the emotion I have right now is most likely anxious. The idea of change is terrifying to me sometimes. And with this season of uncertainty, with having the idea of not knowing what's coming next or what the future holds, is something that is terrifying. So that's what I'm feeling.
My name is Jace. I'm 19 years old, and one fun fact about me is that I'm a huge music enthusiast. I love listening to and analyzing music and making playlists more than anything. And one emotion that I'm feeling right now is overwhelmed with all of this information that's kind of like flooding my phone through the media and everything. I just don't exactly know how to process and how to deal with all of it at once. And this is also new for me, that all I know what to do is feel overwhelmed. So that's one emotion that I'm feeling right now.
Hi, my name is Nadine Gibson. I'm 15 years old, and one fun fact about me is I'm what you would call an aspiring polyglot, which basically means I'm obsessed with languages, learning them, reading them, just anything about a bunch of different languages. And one emotion I'm feeling right now is, I guess, it's not really an emotion, but it's kind of just a feeling or a state, I guess. Just a lot of expectations. I feel like being out of school, because in school there are constantly all of these expectations, what you are expected to strive for, what you're expected to accomplish, what you're expected to feel, and things like that. And I feel like since I don't necessarily have that in my environment right now, I feel like I have to create and falsate my own expectations, and kind of recognizing the fact that I'm doing that and then trying to break that down. I feel like that's what my current emotional goal is.
Hey everybody, my name is Hayden. I'm 17. One fun fact about me is that I'm very talkative. I love speaking and just talking with my friends and family, and always kind of bringing people together through speaking and also actively listening. And I think one thing that I would really be feeling right now is there's a little bit of confusion. This year has definitely been one for the just like it's just been crazy. In November, I went through a school shooting, so I had 2 weeks off, and then I had 2 days canceled because of fires near my school. And so now with all this, I have almost 2-3 months canceled, and I'm just feeling really confused with why. But now it's more becoming understanding of that and knowing that it is happening for a reason.
Well, I love you all very much. Gifts.
I don't know if any of their stories or their current feelings resonate with what you're feeling right now, but whatever you're feeling right now, I think it's important to remind ourselves that those feelings are totally valid, totally real. In fact, feelings themselves are not necessarily good or bad. How we react or respond to those feelings, though, can have consequences. What we choose to do based on the way we're feeling can help people or hurt people. They can help us or hurt us. One of the best ways to navigate big, tough feelings in our life is to actually call them out by name. Right? Sometimes we feel things and we don't actually pay attention or label what we're feeling, and then those feelings drive our actions. To me, that's like letting a stranger into your house and letting them do whatever they want. So, the point of this next challenge is to not let strangers do whatever they want in your house. to name it, to invite feelings into your life, and immediately by naming them, you immediately have more control over them. This challenge is called Name It to Tame It. This is how it goes. I want you to think to yourself about the primary feeling you've been feeling over the past week. What is it? Is it annoyed or exhausted or overwhelmed or stressed or grateful or claustrophobic? Whatever that word is to you, see if you can identify that feeling right now. And then I want you to write like a 6-word bio, a 6-word description of that feeling for yourself. For me, let's say the word is annoyed. Then my 6-word description might be every little thing feels really big. Right? When I'm annoyed, sometimes little things can drive me crazy as if they were really massive things. Think about it like a little Instagram bio for that feeling. That challenge just starts to make you more aware of what's going on in your body and in your mind. And now the next time you're feeling something in the present, try to name it to get more control over it. Perhaps the question isn't whether or not kindness is good or bad. Perhaps the question is what gets in the way. Feelings get in the way. When I feel anxious or overwhelmed or stressed out, I'm less likely to practice these outward actions of good. The second thing that gets in my way is fear. And I like to think about fear in my life as lies I've told myself long enough that I've started to believe that they're true. We get told a lot of things in our world, from our friends, from our family, from social media, from culture. We have all these inputs coming in all the time. We take in a ton of information, and it kind of makes sense to realize that not all that stuff is necessarily true. But we receive so much information on a day-to-day basis that our brain actually doesn't have time to keep up with sifting through all that data. It's hard to know what is real or not. It's hard to know what is capital T true for me, what I should listen to, what I should believe. And I think that most of the things that you and I are scared of are just lies that we've told ourselves or the world has told us long enough that we've started to believe that they're real. For example, maybe you've been in a situation where you're meeting someone new and you're really worried about what they think about you. When I ask this question in large groups, almost everyone in the room says that they've had that experience before, which means it's really likely that you've met a person and you're worried about what they're thinking about you while they're worried about what you're thinking about them. Which means you're thinking about what they're thinking about while they're thinking about what you're thinking about. Which means no one's actually thinking about anything. Which means maybe we're wasting a lot of time worrying about what people think about us. But the feeling of fear, that worry of embarrassment or judgment or rejection, is very real. It's an important reminder to me that just because we feel something does not guarantee that it's true. Just because we fear something does not guarantee that it's real. But those fear monsters, those lies in our brain can affect the way that we love ourselves or other people. For example, maybe one of your fears, like mine, is around failure. I'm terrified that I'm not going to do things right or perfectly. In fact, sometimes I'm so scared that I'm not going to do things well that I won't even do them at all. Simple example, a little over a year ago, my grandfather was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And I remember I had the last interaction with him, and I don't know if you've ever had that situation where you knew that in that moment, this was going to be the last time you did something, the last time you talked to someone. It's kind of a scary, surreal moment, and it almost puts like this weird pressure on that experience. So much pressure that in that moment, I didn't really know what to talk about. I wanted to say all these meaningful things, but I was scared I wouldn't say the right ones. So we ended up talking about motorcycles or something. I gave him sort of a frail hug and walked away, realizing it might be the last time I see my papa. So I went home and I thought to myself, I should do something kind. I should write him a note, or you know what, I'll film him a video with all the things that I love about him and respect about him. I'll send him this series of memories to hopefully capture all the love that I have for him and have had over the course of our whole life. But then I started to realize, my job is talking about kindness. I help run this character strong company that's supposed to teach about doing kind things in the world, and I've been talking about kindness for like the past 10 years. So in my brain, I thought to myself, this thing had to be perfect. I'm literally a person that talks about kindness for a living, so this video better be really perfect kindness. And so I got really worried that it wasn't going to be perfect, it wasn't going to be good enough, and so I kept not filming it, and then not filming it the next day, and then the day after that. They say that perfect is the enemy of good, that perfect is the enemy of done, and that is true for me. Sometimes we think about that in terms of like work or school or success. But I think about that quote through the lens of compassion or kindness. Sometimes if I'm so scared that what I'm going to create or do or say for someone isn't just right, then I decide not to do it at all. Finally, I stood on top of this mountain. I was alone in Alaska for a speaking engagement. I decided to go on a hike. I hiked to the top of this mountain and I had this beautiful view and I was inspired. I sat up on top of the mountain, meditated, felt like I was going to float away, felt like I was so in tune and in touch. And finally, I selfie camered it and I filmed this profound and meaningful video for my grandpa. I pressed send but didn't get good service at the top of the mountain, so I got finally back down to my car, pressed send. I called my mom on the drive home and she told me that my grandpa just earlier that day had gone into a coma. He passed away the next day. He never saw the video. I think we all want more kindness in our life, but we forget sometimes the role that fear plays in preventing it. Maybe for you it's not a fear of failure, maybe it's a fear of being rejected. Maybe it's a fear of embarrassment or being laughed at. Maybe it's a fear of that awkward moment when you don't know how someone's going to receive the gift of kindness you're trying to give. But if we aren't willing to confront that fear, then we're going to let these lies control all the ways that we love in our life. And that seems really silly. To let something as silly as a lie shape the way we live with love. So here's my dare. I dare you to spend a moment. Write it down, maybe put it in your notes in your phone, or just think it right now in your brain. What is it that you're fighting for? And I want to know, do you believe that what you're fighting for is bigger than your fear? Because if we cannot clearly articulate what it is that we care about, if we cannot clearly speak or write down what our purpose is, then it's really hard to ever practice that thing. Because there's all kinds of things that are going to want to get in the way. All those fears are going to creep in, and if I don't know that my fight is bigger than my fears, then my fears are going to control my life and my love. So, I dare you to write down and fill in these blanks. I am fighting for blank because I believe blank. Fill in those blanks and see if for you, your fight is bigger than your fear. It's not a question of whether or not kindness is worthwhile. It is a question of, are we willing to move things out of the way? Those obstacles that prevent us from living a more kind life. We've talked about feelings. We've talked about fear. The last one, frequency. Did you know that 45% of our day is built on habit? I read this really great book. It's called The Power of Habit by a guy named Charles Duhigg. And he says the research would say that about half of our day is built on routine. Why? Well, the average person makes 35,000 choices a day. And if our brain had to make all of those choices consciously, we would be more exhausted than we already are. So our brain actually really likes habits as like an energy conservation technique. It uses habits to prevent us from the friction every time we have to make a choice. That's why about half of our day starts to become habit. That data point scares me, because if 45% of my day is habit, it means that 45% of my week is, which means that 45% of my month is, which when you really think about it, it means that about half of my life is on autopilot. I realized for myself that the most kind people I know, they don't have any more time than I do. They just make time for the things that they think are really important. They make time for things like kindness. I realized that the most kind people I know, they don't do just one big event one time a year. They don't pull it all together and put it into 8 hours of community service on one Saturday of 1 month of 1 year. They do really small things consistently over time. If I know that 45% of my day is built on habit, my brain goes like this. What percent of my 45% is designed to be kind? Do I have any habits of kindness? Do I do anything every day or every week that is intentionally kind towards myself or others? I met this kid a few years ago named Caden. Caden just graduated from high school not long ago, and one of the things I learned about Caden was that Caden showed up at the front door of his school every day for 2 consecutive school years. He started at the beginning of his junior year. He would get to school around 45 minutes, an hour early, and he would stand at the front door of his school, prop it open, and greet kids as they walked in. I asked him why, and he gave me 2 really profound responses. The first one, he said, I realized when I got to school, I wanted to be involved in everything. So I joined 1,000 different clubs. I became an officer of a bunch of different ones. And he goes, I started not being able to show up to all of them. And in fact, I got overwhelmed. And I would show up to like half the things, half the time, and give half my energy to half the stuff. He goes, it occurred to me by the end of my sophomore year that in trying to do everything, I ended up doing nothing very well. He goes, so starting in the beginning of my junior year, I decided to do one thing and do it really well. He goes, I was never going to miss a day at that door. Thing 2. He goes, the reason I wanted to show up, Houston, is because I never wanted anyone at my school to feel lonely like I had. If Caden had shown up to that door, if Caden had given that act of kindness only when he felt like it, how many days do you think he would have shown up? Not many. It was early. He had lots of other work, lots of other obligations going on in his life, and quite frankly, not everyone was always kind to Caden in return. But Caden was so clear about what he was fighting for. It didn't matter how he felt or what he was afraid of. He kept showing up. I believe that 1% difference over time will always have a greater impact than the big events, the big assemblies, the big kickoffs. So my challenge to you is, what's going to be your 1% kindness? What's going to be your daily habit of goodness in this world? What will you make time for every day to bring a little bit more kindness to your life? I know that sometimes it's hard to come up with those ideas on your own, so I wanted to create something just for you. It's a 30-day kindness journal, and here's the deal. Every day you get 1 action of kindness. It'll take you 10 minutes or less. You don't even have to leave home to do the actions, and every action will cost you no money. The biggest cost is going to be your time and probably your comfort, your feelings, your fear. But I challenge you every day to wake up and see if you can start to build a habit of kindness into your life. And every day as you go to sleep, there's a spot to reflect on how it went. See what happens when you make kindness a part of your day-to-day world. See what happens if you can put 1% towards something kind. See what happens when you make kindness your normal. There is a gap in our world between what we believe is good and what we are actually good at. And I believe that that gap, the only way that we close that gap is to do a lot of work on ourselves first. Most of leadership isn't about doing things for others. It is first about doing the work on yourself to figure out what's getting in the way of a more kind me. And if you're anything like me, it's usually all my feelings, all my fears, and the frequency with which I put my attention and time towards the things that matter most. Naomi Bon sat on stage, and the entire time she was speaking, she had a glass of water in front of her. She talked about how the Nazis in the concentration camps would put water into the center of the room. And these people who'd been in these camps for weeks or months, who hadn't been fed much food, let alone given much water, the Nazis would use the glass of water as a temptation, as a way to try to show the other Nazis of how much of an animal these Jewish people were. They believed that if they put that water in the middle of the room, the people would attack each other. And that would prove to them that they were less than human. At the end of the speech, Nomi grabs a glass of water. She stands up out of her chair and she toasts to the audience. She takes a sip. She says, "Freedom." And that's how she ended. I believe all of us have the profound and important gift of freedom. The freedom to choose what we're fighting for, what we give our time to, who we help, the kind of work we do every single day to bring kindness to life in this world. Your leadership is not about a position or a title. Your leadership has very little to do with the events or the assemblies you put on. In fact, you don't even have to have school in session to be a leader. I measure the leaders in my life by their willingness, their frequency, and how hard they're willing to fight for love. I appreciate you all so much and so wish we could hang out in person, and I know we will again soon. In the meantime, if you want to find access to any of the stuff I talked about today, you can visit characterstrong.com. That's where we have all of our curriculum and stuff to serve schools. If you want to start the 30-day kindness journal, it's deepkindnessjournal.com. And if you want to follow me or send me a message or let me know what you're fighting for or how the kindness journal is going, please find me. It's at Houston Craft. Houston like the city, Craft like the cheese. I love you all very much.
We also have some very special people that we would like to recognize for their outstanding leadership this year. We are so honored to have you all as a part of the WASC in every capacity. Without further ado, here are your 2020 award winners.
Once again, my name is Erin Pease, and I am so grateful that you tuned into our live today. I hope that you had some fun and even learned something new. Please share a photo with us using the hashtag WASC Thoughtful Thursday, or email us at socialmedia@wasc.org to be entered in our social media challenge for today. Today's challenge is to post a picture and description of your council's best project that they've done for the community this year, or what you're doing during COVID-19 to help those around you. We look forward to gaining from your ideas. Remember to submit your videos to the Seize the Day challenge to be showcased on Saturday. We can't wait for Friday. See you there!